Earlier this year, this committee, under the leadership of Chairman Corker, took a very strong interest in ending modern slavery, highlighted by an important hearing on February the 4th. On April 22nd, the Senate voted 99-0 to strengthen domestic penalties against human trafficking and to provide additional protections for victims. On the same day, Congressman Smith held a House subcommittee hearing examining the State Department's Trafficking in Persons report and emphasizing the need to maintain the integrity of the tier ranking system. Later that very same day, a strong 16-10 bipartisan vote, the Senate Finance Committee accepted my amendment to the Trade Promotion Authority bill to prohibit expedited congressional procedures for trade deals with countries ranked Tier 3 on the TIP report. Of course, Tier 3 is among the worst countries. So do you believe that we should be in the midst of providing fast track for countries that are the worst offenders in human trafficking?
Thank you, Senator. I think the administration is deeply committed to preventing and eliminating all forms of trafficking in persons throughout the world, and I can just say that some of what I have seen in my own previous incarnations overseas and my foreign service capacity, it's simply horrific. And so we engage.
We can agree to that. So you and I are in agreement on that. My question, which could be a simple yes or no, is do you believe that we should be fast-tracking countries that have the worst record under our own reports in terms of human trafficking?
I think it's a fair point that economic engagement is a tool in our toolkit, and we're certainly following the amendment closely as it's under discussion, as the House and the Senate work through the bill.
But we have used economic engagement, and other countries have not moved off the list as a result of economic engagement. Let me ask you this. The State Department's 2015 TIP report is due to be released next month. In the State Department's own words, it, quote, is the U.S. government's principal diplomatic tool to engage foreign governments on human trafficking. Now, all of us who share a deep concern about the scourge of human trafficking depend on the integrity of that report for the truth about where the trafficking is worse and what must be done about it. Is the issue human trafficking important to your work in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor?
Yes, it is important to our work in the Bureau. I will just note that the trafficking in persons structure, the office that authors the report and advances these foreign policy priority programs, is actually separate and is not under my purview. Mm-hmm. That said, we work quite closely with them, and the and we work very hard to sort of deconflict, I would say, where they can provide some assistance that perhaps we can't, and vice versa. We work very collaboratively.
So is there, and I understand technically it's in right. Secretary Sewell's ambit, but is the accuracy, the reliability, the integrity of the TIP report important to the department?
It is, absolutely. This is a process that is, that every embassy in our world is vested in.
Do you have any reason to doubt the integrity of the reporting process?
I do not, although I am not involved in it this year in quite the same way that I have been in prior incarnations.
Well, based upon your prior experience, do you believe?
No, I don't.
Based upon your prior experience, are the rankings subject to political pressure in light of other priorities?
My experience does not suggest that, but I can't speak more broadly.
Okay. Mr. Feely, as you know, Cuba and Venezuela are ranked Tier 3 in the TIP report, the worst ranking, which indicates they do not comply with the Trafficking Victims Protection Act's minimum standards and aren't making significant efforts to do so. So is the integrity of the TIP report important to your section of the State Department?
Undeniably, yes, sir.
Are you confident of the integrity of the report?
I believe that we work with our embassies and with our DRL and our trafficking in persons colleagues to produce the very best report that we can with the information that we have.
So even though Cuba is a Tier 3, one of the worst traffickers, where Year magazine had a couple of years ago, sexual hotspot of the world, even though in fact it is a Tier 3, we are in the midst of giving them a series of concessions, even though they are among the worst traffickers in the world.
Sir, the approach that the administration has taken to restart diplomatic relations with Cuba is in no way a reward for any perceived good behavior. We agree completely with you and Senator Rubio and many members who believe that the Castro government is a single-party state that clearly wants no part of democracy and which has systematically abused the human rights of its people. What I would say is that with regard to TIP, the previous Tier 3 rankings, we believe that they have been justified based on the specific criteria of the TIP law.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that, so you have a country that's a Tier 3 ranking, you have a country that violates UN Security Council resolutions and shipments of arms to North Korea, for which it got not even a slap on the wrist. You got a country that just accepted, it was in the midst of receiving another shipment of arms in violation of international law that was probably headed for the FARC. You have a country that has Joanne Chesimard, a convicted terrorist on the FBI 10 most wanted list of terrorists in the world, who killed a New Jersey state trooper. And I know we're not, rewarding them for that behavior, but we're certainly not making progress on any of it. Let me ask you one last question, which is a broader question than beyond Cuba. In our democracy programs, I am sadly concerned. We have never in the world, our democracy programs have ever been rejected by a totalitarian government or a repressive regime, that has subverted the very essence of our democracy programs. And yet there is a suggestion that somehow because a country doesn't like it, or we didn't tell them everything about our democracy program, which we work with a lot of groups in the world, in which we don't tell them, the country that doesn't like the fact that we are trying to promote democracy in that country, that we would subvert it. So I hope we don't go down that road, because then I, for one, will lead a charge, as much as I am the biggest supporter and have been for 23 years of our democracy programs. If we're going to start subverting it to a country that doesn't like it, and therefore we're going to start changing what we are doing, then to be very honest with you, that's a slope for which there's a lot of consequences. A lot of my friends who don't seem to have a problem with with what goes on in Cuba, but are very strong about places in Burma and other places in the world. Yet, if you're going to start subverting democracy programs because a country rejects it because they're totalitarian, then that's a slippery slope, and I hope we don't get to that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Menendez.